there is a prominent figure in the death metal scene called, his name is Dickie Allen. He's in a band where they never played a live show before. It's only recorded. And he's in his other band, which has a very derogatory name, so I won't even say it. He is known in the metal industry for just making he's pushing the boundaries of what, because he makes, there was one song where I swear it wasn't even metal vocals anymore. He was just talking like a goblin. And so he just does crazy stuff that nobody can even think of. And he must just sit around and make wild noises. And that's what I aspire to do. So I feel like I'm influenced by him quite a bit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are maybe getting off the Bruce Springsteen train today, though with new Springsteen music out, he will probably come up as he often does. But joining me today is Taylor Paulson. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, before I tell you about myself, I'll just open up by saying it's kind of strange that I'm even here because I am not a Bruce Springsteen fan. So
yes,
maybe controversial on his podcast.
Not at all. We are welcome to all. We believe in the big table where there's always people to visit. So yeah, no problem.
So a little bit about me. In context of what would be important for this is that I am a vocalist for a band. So, but it might not be exactly what most of your fans listen to. I'm a metal vocalist. So, and not like Slipknot type metal. Like we're talking like death metal, deathcore, like the real hard stuff.
Nice.
And yeah. So, but I'm interested in all music, even though I don't like Bruce Springsteen. I love music from that era and everything. So, and then I also host a podcast. Well, I co-host a podcast with two other people called You Are the Host. So,
tell me a little about that.
So our podcast is kind of like it's a huge gimmick. So when you come on the podcast, when you're a guest on our show, you're actually the host. So you determine exactly what happens and how it goes. While we prod it and make the conversation continue, we always leave it up to the host, the guest, to decide what happens. So
I love that. I think we're gonna try to figure out to let me do that. So sometime that would be fun.
Yeah, we always and we accept anybody. Doesn't matter who you are, celebrity, non-celebrity. So anyone can be a host of the show.
Well, even I may make that level of things. So Taylor, I always like to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what kind of music did you listen to as a kid?
So I grew up, I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I grew up in the northern parts of Minnesota where most people were on farmland, listened to country. Me as a kid, I despised country, to be honest. But I grew up listening. My dad, he listened to rock and like hair metal, stuff like Pantera and Melvins, stuff like that, you know. So he listened, that's where I got my metal roots from. And my stepmom, she listened to a lot of country, which I hated country, especially since I was an angsty teen and I was like, I want to rebel, and especially against her. So that's probably where the strongest influences of music came from when I was a kid growing up.
Are you still anti-country?
I am. So anti is a weird word. I'm way more open to music now than I've ever been in my life. I give everything a chance. So if you have a country song you think that I'm gonna like people in my life, I'll say, hey, show it to me. I'll listen to it wholeheartedly with an open mind, and just not yet have I found a country song that I actually enjoy. So I just think that there won't be a time where I will.
It doesn't speak to your heart the way other music does.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I like some of the lyrics in some country songs, but something about the twang and the voices, they don't click with me musically. So
all right, very interesting. So when did you first like you talked about your dad. So you rebelled against your stepmom, but not your father. So you always kind of moved toward heavy metal, death metal.
Right. Well, and I remember sitting in the living room, and my dad, one of the things that him and my brothers would do is just sit in the living room and randomly play songs just for each other, you know? And I remember I was so young and influential, and I didn't find my sense of what kind of music I like yet at that point. And I remember he put on Melvin's, and I remember hearing the first guitar riff, and I was like, whoa, like something happened inside of me. I was like, that just connected with me. And then I heard just the rough vocals, and I was like, if this is what they were doing, you know, in the 80s, I bet that this gets heavier. So I went on YouTube and just went down a path of finding, you know, what's the heaviest, most disgusting thing I can find. And a lot of those bands I landed on, I don't even like today, but they just, I remember hearing it and be like, this is the heaviest, hardest stuff. Like there was a lot of ego involved at the time where I was like, people think I'm cool because I'm listening to heavy stuff. That was a good chunk of that too. So
Yeah. Did you, as you worked your way through high school and past, did you stay in that kind of genre of music?
Yeah, so I bounced around a lot. Metal is metal is hilarious. Even I get confused because there's so many different subgenres of metal. But I remember I went through this phase where I was listening to metalcore, which is like death metal, but there's a lot more clean vocals in it.
Okay.
But it's a lot of guys singing in super high pitched voices about how they're sad. And I
Okay.
remember that really influenced the start of like my vocal career because
Okay.
I went into being into my first bands when I was 15. It was a year after I started doing vocals, and I was influenced so much by that I'm sad, sad boy stuff. And so I remember that's what really started off my career, which I look back at it now and I just cringe at myself. But
Well, that's okay. When I listened to the first podcast I did back in 2015, I cringe as well. So, yes, we all hopefully get better. I have
yeah,
a real good friend who's an artist, and he says he'll never have a tattoo because he would never get a tattoo that wasn't something he drew. And
mm,
since he's always unhappy, like 2 or 3 years later with his art, he just sees the flaws. He could never get a tattoo. Right.
that's rough. That's
Yeah,
rough.
exactly. Why did you decide to become a vocalist? And do you play other instruments?
So kind of a funny story. I'll actually answer this backwards. So
Please do.
I do play other instruments, but I word it like this. So I play bass just enough and I play guitar poorly. That's
Okay.
how I always say it. So like I don't want to claim I play other instruments because I'm really bad at those ones. I stick to the vocals, you know, 99% of the time.
When you first started a band, was that you were just a vocalist?
Just a vocalist. I every time I've started a band or joined a band, it's always been let me get on vocals for my band before this one I was in. Our bassist randomly quit, so I actually took over for bass for like a little while, but that
Okay.
band was short-lived after that anyways.
What's your current band?
My current band, our name is Archaea, and I just joined them. They're
Hmm.
local to Minnesota. They've been around for a little while. They're like they're like slam death metal. So for people who don't know about death metal genres, slam is like people in death metal already are rough and edgy and don't care. And slam was like, you guys are too mainstream for us, so let's just bang on shit as hard as we can. Um, and I hope that when I come into this band, because I'm still new to them, that we can start. And I already know because we already wrote our single. That we can start making some better stuff. I don't want to say better because I mean I like slam too, but maybe a little more technical. They're a little crazy all over the place. I want to kind of bring in the structure a little bit so that it sounds a little more listenable
And
to
how do you spell
mainstream
them?
audience.
How do you spell the band?
Oh yeah, good one. Archaea. So it's Archaea,
Okay.
and you may or may not find them because Archaea is a bacteria that lives in outer space.
Okay. So very nice. Cool. Why did you want to be a vocalist? What
Yes.
what spoke to you about that expressing?
So so as most people, I feel like growing up, I always looked at the vocalist because they're the front man. You know,
Sure.
everybody does. You know, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, I didn't even have at the time understand if I wanted to do that or not. But I was always like, vocalists are awesome, man. They just they hold this presence. So that was already peaked in the back of my mind, I feel like. But then one of the hobbies I have is I play video games quite a lot.
Okay.
And for anybody who's played video games, they probably have heard of a game called Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
And in Left 4 Dead, it's a zombie. It's about zombies, and there's these creatures, these zombies who come out of the corners and they make a loud noise before they attack you and kill you. They're called hunters. And I remember when I was playing that game, my brothers I'd always imitate the noise, and it actually sounds a little bit like a metal scream. And then after a while, I was like, maybe I could connect those. Maybe I could be a vocalist. And eventually, I did just decide to go full on because I actually sounded like one of the vocalists while making that noise. So I was like, oh, maybe I do have what it takes.
When you started your first band, mostly covers?
No, never covers actually.
Never covers. You've
Still to this
always
day.
been
Yep.
original music.
Yeah, I don't like covers because I can't get out of my head with the fact that I don't sound like the people that I'm trying to cover, which
Okay.
isn't always the point. Sometimes you want the cover to be in your style for a reason, but I, for some reason, can't get out of my head when I listen to it back that it sounds like terrible because it doesn't sound like the original. So I never do covers.
Do you write music?
I do. Well, I don't write music, but I write lyrics. Yes.
You write
So,
lyrics?
and I've actually published all of my unused lyrics from my past bands that are no longer in existence. I published them as poetry books on Amazon.
Ah, very nice.
Yes.
And are they available?
They are available, all three. They are like a series called A Drawn Apocalypse.
Okay, very nice. You'll have to send me the link and I'll include that in the show notes.
I definitely will.
Yeah. And the band, do you guys on Bandcamp, Spotify, anything yet?
So yeah, currently Archaea, my current band, is on Spotify, YouTube. You can find them, Facebook. It's a little tricky to find them sometimes because being slam, there's a lot of grotesque stuff, and I feel like a lot of places are shadow banning us because it's so violent.
Okay.
So you may or may not be able to find them.
Okay, good. Why did you decide to join this band?
I had been on hiatus for 2 years from doing vocals. I was in a band. Me and my brother, we've always been in bands together, and he passed away. So I was taking a break because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know if I could ever be in a band without him.
Sure.
And when I finally was ready, I posted on the local metal scene and I said, hey guys, I'm ready to be back in a band. Here's a clip of my vocals. Let me know if you want me to be in there. And I had 3 bands hit me up and I auditioned for. And basically all 3 bands wanted me and I got to make the choice, which is kind of cool because that's not often
very
that I
cool,
get to make
Taylor.
the choice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And the reason I landed on them is because they aren't perfect and they're not the best musicians, but man, do they have a fun time. They know how to have fun. They know how to be serious enough to make a good song and make it and get it done, but also goofy enough where they don't mind if you're because as a metal vocalist, the best thing you can do is make the most wild noises you can think of. And a lot of these other bands were so structured, I don't think they were going to let me do that. So that's why I landed with them.
Who are your influences? Who did you inspire you to take this journey through this genre of music?
As far as music in general or vocalists specifically?
Either one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll start with vocalists since that's what I'm the most interested in is being a vocalist. There is a prominent figure in the death metal scene his name is Dickie Allen.
Okay.
And he's in a band where they never played a live show before. It's only recorded. And he's also in his other band, which has a very derogatory name, so I won't even say it.
Okay.
But he is known in the metal industry for just making he's pushing what do they call it? Pushing the boundaries of what
pushing the envelope, right?
Do.
Okay.
Right, pushing the envelope. Because there was one song where I swear it wasn't even metal vocals anymore. He was just talking like a goblin. And so he just does crazy stuff that nobody can even think of. And he just yeah, he must just sit around and make wild noises, and that's what I aspire to do. So I feel like I'm influenced by him quite a bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And so how about, you mentioned that's vocalist, how about other musicians, other bands?
Right. So unfortunately, when we talk about other musicians, I actually don't look I hate myself for it, but I don't look at guitarists and drummers, and I don't look at specific people, but I do look
Okay.
at music as a whole. So
Yes.
one of the bands right now that I'm like most inspired by is Enterprise Earth.
Okay.
And even fans of your show, I would suggest go look at a couple songs by them because their newest stuff, their vocalists started focusing on doing some clean singing, and they've been doing some really like soft bridges, which I think makes their music just a whole different genre. It's no longer just metal. It's no longer just heavy. It's a they're really like they're also pushing the envelope of what music can be, not just what metal can be.
And give the band number again. Give the band name again.
It's Enterprise Earth. And out of
Enterprise.
Earth, any
Okay.
song that I would say people should listen to is Overpass.
Okay.
It's so emotional, it's so soft, but then they break down in the middle of the song and it's so heavy and angry. It just hits every emotion you have as a human. So
So you're creative, but are you also a connoisseur of other live bands? Do you enjoy going to concerts and shows?
yeah, I love going to shows. I unfortunately, thanks to COVID, have not been to one. Well, I went to one recently, but it was my first show in like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love going to concerts. I think not only of big bands, I think supporting local bands is one of the best things you can do. I don't even drink
Yes.
alcohol anymore, and I go to the bar scene. I make sure I keep up with local bands because
Yeah.
how else do you get the bands you love if you're not supporting local?
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, um, I've had a lot of musicians on, and the discussion is, how do you promote music during a pandemic? You know,
Mm.
you know, Traditionally you book a gig, you play your music. Afterwards, you got a little table, you're selling your little CD, and you hope you make enough money to pay for the gas to get you to your next gig.
Yeah.
And now
Yep.
that,
Yep.
so I guess social media and all the other stuff is a big goes for that a long way, right?
It definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people have like even right next to me, I have like a really nice mixer and a really nice interface, and obviously I have
Yeah.
a nice microphone. There's a lot of things you can do at home now. So even during a pandemic, you can release some good songs. You can put them straight on Spotify and make money just by yourself, you know.
Yeah. So, do you have any stories from gigs that you want to share?
Oh man. I mean, you'll have to forgive me because like I said, I'm a new dad, so it's hard to think about things.
Sure.
But definitely I think that no specific stories pop out to me, but definitely just like remembering times of when I first ever went on stages.
Hmm.
Like I'm talking like real stages. Like I had played house parties, I had
Yeah.
done all that, and really just that doesn't matter. Everybody's drunk, they're all high schoolers.
Right.
But when I got onto a real stage for the first time, like I can't even express uh how hard I was on myself the whole entire show.
Yeah.
And like just knowing, oh, this is not that good. And it wasn't, to be honest. I was still growing as a musician. So, and just remembering how embarrassed I would feel sometimes because I just had
Okay.
people staring at me like, what is this guy doing kind of thing. But so I guess those are the kind of the only stories. I do have one story. But
Please.
it's from a house party, and being a
Okay.
vocalist, I feel like it's the most dangerous instrument to play.
Okay.
Because if a guitarist is going too hard and breaks his guitar, he's gonna go buy a new guitar. But if you
Exactly.
fuck up as a vocalist, you can't buy new vocal flaps. You can't do it. This is not gonna
No,
work.
no, you
And
cannot.
I'm completely self-taught. I didn't look at YouTube for instruction tutorials. I taught myself everything I know. And so when I first started screaming, I was actually doing a lot of really bad things for me. I lost my voice in the beginning because I was screaming wrong. I was not using the proper parts of my body. Um,
Right.
went through that, and finally I figured it out. I was like, oh, I'm screaming now, and it doesn't hurt. This is the right way to do it. Perfect. And
Sure.
then I didn't know, you're supposed to warm up before a show. No one ever told me that, and I never did it for the first almost a year of performing at house parties and small venues. And I would
Yeah.
just go and I would just scream, 4, 5 songs in a row, just scream them hard. And then I would just no voice for a week, blow out my vocal cords. And so
But
I guess it's not really one story, but that happened to me so many times.
yeah.
And I recently did that again, which is stupid and amateur of me. So
So, congratulations on being a new dad.
Thank you.
What's the plan, son or daughter?
She is a daughter. Her
And
name
so
is Sapphire.
what is the plan with Sapphire? What raising her musically? What are your thoughts?
Yes, well, my fiance and I actually not disagree about raising her. But we disagree musically
Yes.
on what we like. She listens to a lot more electronic and indie, kind of alternative music. And
Yeah.
I love that stuff too, but metal's where my heart's at. And there's been talk about this, about how do we raise her so that she doesn't have an upbringing like me, where I hate a genre pretty much solely based on the person that I was rebelling against. And
Right.
I think that the thing that we landed on is we just need to openly play everything that we both listen to around our daughter, which we currently do. And she's obviously a newborn, but um and then when she grows up, just support whatever musical choice she makes, and that's just what it's gonna be.
Yeah. There it is. Forget trying to choose the correct religion. Let's make sure we get this
It
right, like that she opened with a mind enjoying all music.
right,
So
right,
that's
exactly,
good. Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
I would say,
yes.
sorry, didn't mean to cut you
No.
off. I will say that I am going to introduce her early on in life to different types of instruments. So,
Yes.
and I'm not going to push anything on her, but I will introduce her to them. And if she takes a liking to it, then that's cool. I would love to see my daughter take a path down being in bands like I was, because I think I grew as a character. I grew so much from all that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And it you'll hear dads talk about um getting a baseball glove and getting it into their son or daughter right away, or a soccer ball or something, because they love sports. So I think it's the right thing. Like, oh, let's get this music, and if she has any inclination or any thoughts on that, it'd be good to have her go on that.
yeah. And I can already tell she's a metalhead. So
There you go.
when she's crying and in a fit, just because, not for any specific reason, like we've done everything we can to try to soothe her, then
Yeah.
I'll walk around the living room. I'll do circles and I'll be walking around the living room just doing gutturals, just, and she loves it. It
Oh,
puts her
how
right to sleep.
fun.
So, and then
That,
like if I play metal on the TV, passes out. So,
yeah,
hey, I don't know. Maybe that's a good sign.
that is a great sign. That's a wonderful sign. Good. So you said you're going to work with this band. You guys are going to try to shape your message and shape your what kind of music you're going to produce. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So currently, when I joined the band, I when you say message, I would have to explain how I write lyrics and how the
Okay,
message I'm trying to
please
send
do.
actually works.
Yeah.
And if for anybody who's going to go buy my poetry books, my books of lyrics, like they should probably know this beforehand. Plus, there's a big warning label on the very top. But so basically, the way I write lyrics is like many artists, I feel an emotion and I write a lyric based off of that. And then
Sure.
what I take is, since I'm a creative person, I've written 2 novels as well. So what I
Okay.
do is I dig deep into my mind of fiction and see, how could I get a shock response? How could I get this more entertaining rather than just my basic emotions? And then I turn it into a work of fiction. So it comes from real emotion turned into a work of fiction. So it's really dark and really violent because I push that a little further. Most people would stop at I'm sad, but because of my work of fiction, I move it to I'm gonna murder people.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously not real. It's a work of fiction, but and
Right.
so I'm not pushing a message I would think people should take with them, but it's definitely metaphorical if you can read deep enough into lyrics that you could find a message in there, but I don't suggest you try to. Just
Okay.
appreciate that it's dark and violent. But
Are
and
there are there writers that have influenced you that you enjoy?
um yeah, I mean, listening, like I said early on, I was writing a lot of sad boy music because of the sad breakup songs. But
Sure.
nowadays, most metal bands like Traitors and Spite, and I mentioned Dickie Allen as being a vocal inspiration. He's also a lyrical inspiration because of his band, his second band, the one he's never performed with live. Their name is and I apologize for everybody ahead of time, but the name of that band is Infant Annihilator.
Okay.
And basically it's a huge metaphor for how corrupt the church is and how they the controversies against the Catholic Church. And so he writes some very gruesome lyrics because he will write songs from the perspective of being a priest committing these terrible acts.
Okay.
And he also pushes what I feel like lyrically, because he doesn't mean anything he's saying. It's literally a huge metaphor, but it's just so gross and grotesque, but it hits a certain meaning at the same time. So
Okay. Interesting.
if that
Cool.
makes sense.
All
Yeah.
right. So besides the band, what's next for you creatively?
Oh, there's always something creative going on in my life.
Okay.
I have a personal YouTube channel that I constantly put videos up about video games and vocals and everything
hmm
music. And then of course the podcast is always gonna be pushing my podcast to get it as big as I can get it and as big of a production and as many people as I can have on. And yeah, I think that those two things mostly are what most of my attention is going to go into, aside from being a vocalist.
Talk to me a little bit about the podcast. How did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to have a podcast. Not always, but like I've wanted to have a podcast since like I don't know, it had to have been 2016 was the first time I ever said, "Hey, I should make a podcast."
Okay.
But I didn't know what to make it about. At the time, I was obsessed with playing video games, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll do a video game podcast." Then I did a little research, and there's so many video game podcasts that I was like, no one's ever gonna listen to this. It's just one more guy on the internet talking about video games. I need to
Sure.
have something better. And finally I was talking with my wife about, or fiance, I call her my wife. I was talking to Emily, that's the other
hmm
co-host of the podcast. I was like, we should do a podcast together. We talk a lot. And then she made the joke that I talk a lot, which is
hmm
true. And I
Okay.
said, but what would the podcast be? And then we were just bouncing ideas off each other, and we're constantly joking. We're might be some of the most lighthearted people you've ever met. We just joke about so many things, maybe stuff we shouldn't even joke about. But
Okay.
and I remember we were just coming up with the most funny gimmicks. We were like, how can we make it the funniest gimmick of a podcast? And I remember I sprouted the idea, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I was like, what if we did a podcast where the idea was we didn't do work?
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And I was like, what if the guest came on and hosted the podcast and we called it You Are the Host, and it became their show, so we
Yeah.
don't have to do anything. And that's where
Yeah.
the idea of the show came. Obviously, we still work a ton for the podcast,
Yeah.
but
Sure. Absolutely.
it's a fun gimmick to have, and that's kind of how it came to light right there.
What are some of your favorite episodes so far?
Man, I hate this question because in the cliche trope of it all, I love every episode.
Sure.
But
Absolutely. What surprised you then? Let me ask it that way. What did you go, oh, this will be interesting. And you go, wow, that was ended up being outstanding.
yeah, I've had a few of those. Honestly, the episode I just recorded an episode yesterday, and that one was really, really surprising for me. I mean, not surprising, and I mean, I like the guy, I love the guy, he's one of my friends, but
Yeah.
it blew my mind how much content came out of that episode. I can't answer which episode was my favorite though.
Okay.
I can, I mean, I just don't like to put favorites on things, but
Sure. No, I understand. That's okay.
I one of the hobbies that I hold dear to my heart is backpacking. So
Okay.
not everybody knows what backpacking is, but you're hiking through the woods for many, many miles. You carrying
Yeah.
your camp on your back. That's
Yeah. You're
backpacking.
self-contained. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. You're
And
not car camping. You're not
yep.
truck camping. You are, yeah, self-contained. My
Yep.
wife loves to backpack.
Yeah, and we had started out by getting Kyle Hates Hiking on our podcast, who's a very prominent hiker YouTuber personality. And I thought
Okay.
this is really cool. It's like a celebrity on our podcast. And then shortly after him, we actually managed to get IB Tat on our podcast. And IB Tat he's not as big as Kyle Hates Hiking, but man, that episode, it was like, I just feel like his YouTube videos are so personal. I felt like I knew him on a different level. So it
Okay.
was that was like a highlight. That might have been my favorite episode, just talking to IB Tat, which he's gonna come on again, but I can't even believe that I was able to get that guy. That was what blew my mind about it. And then just talking to him, he has crazy stories. He's a recovering alcoholic. He had a lot to talk about. So that was a really good episode. And that was early on too. That was like episode 14 or something.
How
Something like
many
that.
episodes are you up to?
Oh, I think we're in the 50s. I just don't know which one. I had to.
Okay,
I
that's
don't.
no,
I don't realize
that's
till I edit.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if someone wants to volunteer to be the host, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, so there are several ways they could go to our Facebook, which is just You Are the Host podcast. You can message us there. You can go to our Twitter or Instagram, all the same, You Are the Host pod. And then they could also email You Are the Host pod at gmail.com.
Okay. And is there anything specific you look for in a guest slash host?
There is.
Okay.
They have to be human and be able to talk.
There you go. And the more they talk, the better. I will tell you,
Right.
as a
And
podcast host,
yeah,
when people go, well, I hate to ramble. No, no, no. Rambling is good.
kind of the idea. But
Yeah,
honestly,
exactly.
I have to say that I don't mind if they don't talk a lot. I've had people on who were like, I want to be on the show, but I'm awkward and I don't really know what to say and I don't talk a lot. And I'm like, it's no big deal. I talk enough for 5 people, so I can
Okay.
fill the space if it's not there. It's okay. I'll always have something to say.
And do you feel like you get them out of their shell and so that they share?
I've definitely felt like, yeah, some people who I know in real life where they'll come to an event of mine and they'll just be sitting there not talking at all. I feel like
Yeah.
even some of those people who came on the podcast have just blown up during the podcast. They just
Hmm.
I get them talking about something will click, and then all of a sudden they're talking more than they thought they could.
Very nice. Cool. So that sounds great. Anything besides the plug in the band and the podcast you want to plug?
Like I said, you can find my poetry books. They're called A Drawn Apocalypse, and then
Okay.
you can also find my 2 published novels. I'm working on my 3rd right now, and those are called Anfractuous.
Okay.
So
And you're going to send me all those links so I can add it to the show note?
I definitely will. Yeah.
That sounds good. Well, I am open. If you want to have me join you, I would love to. I think this would be fun. I think it would be a great thing. So let's try to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Any final thoughts before I get you to the Mary question?
Um, no, I don't have any
Okay.
final thoughts.
All right. So this is going to be great since you are not a Bruce Springsteen fan and embrace all things heavy metal. Have you done your homework and listened to Thunder Road?
I did listen to it. Yes.
All right, great. All right. So if you are a fan of Taylor and his music, if you're a fan of his podcast and you're over here because you want to hear him tell wonderful stories, thank you for listening. I end every podcast with the Mary question. And what that is Jay Armstrong, who was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area, would, when he was teaching, he would take the song Thunder Road by Bruce Springsteen and would break it apart. They would look at the lyrics, they would talk about the themes, he would compare it to like Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And then at the end of the 2 days, after breaking apart the poem, he would ask his class, does Mary get in the car? So Taylor, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Well, when I listened to it and I read the lyrics along while I was listening, I got to the end of the song and I was like, man, I hope he doesn't want some crazy metaphorical answer because I just didn't get it from that.
Okay.
And and so I literally just was like, yeah, she got in. It says she got in. And I wish I could find something more metaphorical about it, but I had such a hard time. And I
No,
said,
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah,
That
she got in.
Yeah, yeah. So technically, the lyrics officially are I'm pulling out of here to win. But when
Mhm.
he performs it live, he often says pulling out of here to win. So that's why the question. 60% of the
Huh.
people say she does, about 40% say she doesn't.
I could see how they would say she doesn't because there's a little confusing lyric in there where it says she's standing on the porch and they're driving away. And I was like, does that mean she got left behind? What's
Yeah,
happening? But yeah,
yeah.
so yeah.
Very great. All right, give me your social media plugs again.
Yep. So You Are the Host pod on Twitter and Instagram, and You Are the Host podcast on Facebook.
Well, thank you for taking time. I know you have father duties to go, so I
Mhm.
made sure I got you out in plenty of time. It was a great talking to you, Taylor. I appreciate so much. Be safe and please, you're welcome anytime. Listeners, same to you. Be safe, be kind, and let's get through this together. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.